that's on. Oops. Hi, how's everybody doing?
Blurry.
So this is great because now you know what I sound like Sunday morning at Con. Welcome, this is Women in Voice Acting, kind of a baseline. We can really talk about anything. We don't have a set schedule or curriculum or anything like that. My name is Rachel Robinson. You probably know me best as Fang from Final Fantasy 13, Zorn Blitz and Hellsing Ultimate, Garia from Judo Rise of the Duel Masters. I just got announced yesterday as Ogami from Danganronpa the animation, which I'm really excited about. And a lot of other things. So, just kind of a brief history. I got started professionally about 15, 16 years ago. I started doing a lot of commercials because I have that kind of announcery voice. And then eventually graduated into things like, well, my first animated show was Celebrity Deathmatch. I don't know if you guys ever watched that. It's awesome and demented, and sometimes like I can't believe I'm part of this. And I got to play both Pamela Anderson and Vern Troyer. Same episode, different death matches. But yeah, then I started doing video games and fairly recently started doing anime, which is a whole different ballgame, and I really, really love it. So, kind of my thought about women in voice acting is, you know, throughout, there used to be like 7 people ever who did all the voiceover back in the day. And then it got very, very popular because people were like, oh, this is kind of an easy way to make money. Or I think it just kind of happened naturally over time. It used to be mostly radio, and then it was, you know, all the animated stuff. And now there's 8 million different platforms besides animation and commercials and narration and promos and anime, and there's books on tape and mobile platforms and internet, so it's amazing how much it's expanded. But I've noticed that I think no matter what, even though there's so much more work than there ever was, there's still probably about 65 to 70% of it for men. You'll find, you know, especially in fighting games and fantasy games and stuff like that. And you know, anime is kind of different because there's a lot of shows that are based on girls, which is really cool. So you still have to work very hard. There's a lot of competition. And it shouldn't have to be that way because in my mind, there's enough work for everybody. It's just a question of, you know, who gets what. The nice part is that once you're in and you have kind of a signature and people recognize you, there's things that you may be better geared towards. And you'll probably get those roles more. I tend to get the roles of a lot of deep-voiced women. I really don't understand that. But I've been very fortunate because a lot of the women that I've gotten to play are very strong women. I don't know if that is just to do with my voice, or maybe there's just something I put in. Maybe people think I sound either trustworthy or caring or threatening, whatever it is. So I'm working on it as long as I possibly can. So basically what I want to do is kind of open up the floor to you guys. We don't, again, it doesn't have to be on this topic, but I find that, you know, starting off with a little bit of a guide will help, and you can certainly ask questions about the business of voiceover. You can ask questions about technique. If I can remember any funny stories, I will certainly tell them if you ask me. But I want to leave it up to you guys. So please feel free to ask basically whatever you want. So, yes.
The first time that you got the opportunity to do a anime, what was your reaction?
I was excited. A lot of times, you know, a lot of people ask me how I go about getting auditions, and there's never any one way for that either. I have several agents through which auditions will come through networking and just getting to know more people throughout the years. A lot of people I have outside relationships with, and that audition came to me through a friend. He said, well, it was kind of funny. The whole process took about 2 weeks, which is to say, he goes, hey, here's somebody that you need to be on his radar. Here's his information, give him a shout. I don't know if he's casting anything right now, but you need to know him. So I was like, great. So I wrote to him, told him some of the stuff that I'd done, and I said it was, you know, referred by so-and-so. This is just for you, for the future. Within about a week, he sent an audition for Hellsing Ultimate. And I was like, hey, cool. I get to do an accent. I get to be a vampire. And she's awful, you guys. She's a Nazi vampire. It's like as bad as it gets. So I did the audition and I sent that off. And I had a lot of fun with it. And about 2 days later, I got a call from the producer saying, "We loved your Zorin. Can you work on Monday?" And I said, "Well, yes, I can." So it was also, you know, booking work is always exciting. The thrill of that never goes away. But also, I had never really done anime before. Los Angeles, I can't really speak for other ones, but Los Angeles agents unfortunately don't care much about anime because it doesn't make them any money. It's a whole different ballgame. There is union anime, but it's covered under the foreign dubbing agreement, which is a whole other thing. And most of the time, it's just not worth it for them. So that was a lucky thing because that came through an outside source. And since then, Taliesin Jaffe, who I'm sure a lot of you guys know, has become one of my dearest friends and a really, really trusted colleague. So I couldn't have asked for a better start in anime. I mean, of course, not having grown up really watching that, I was kind of raised on Tex Avery and Looney Tunes and the Warner Brothers stuff and Hanna-Barbera. And so by the time anime got really, really popular, I kind of was just doing other things. So he sat me down and we watched a couple of episodes and I was like, "Oh my gosh, she's horrible." And he goes, "Yes, and you die horribly too, just so you know." But he guided me through the process. It was kind of fun. I mean, I had done ADR before. I had done voice notching and that sort of thing. So I was not unfamiliar with the process. But it's you're using a lot of different parts of your brain too, because with original animation in video games, you're usually just recording the dialogue and then they'll animate to you later. This is you are matching flaps on screen, and you're trying to read lines, and you're trying to act. You're trying to perform well without sounding like you're just reading. So that was one of the best experiences that I've had voice acting or otherwise, but also just to have my first anime be a property like that, and to be the villain that everybody loves to hate was awful. Yes.
Does it seem like most of the jobs are around LA, or are they spread out over the country?
Obviously there's markets all over the country now. The vast majority of the work is going to be in LA because that's where most of the casting houses are. That's where most of these studios are. I think that's just where most people want to be. But that doesn't mean that you can't do it elsewhere. I mean, the nice part is it's become a non-terrestrial business. And with the speed of technology being what it is, ISDN and Source Connect and Skype and all that, you can really record from anywhere, which is another reason why I love this job. Because I don't technically have to be there. They like it if you're there sometimes. They like it better. I've actually had to do a lot more traveling. I moved recently, and I'm not currently in LA right now. I've spent most of my life born and raised there. Actually, from LA, you guys. Somebody had to be. But I've been working on a video game that they're probably going to be still working on throughout the year, and I have averaged a visit back about once a month. But a lot of times you get to. It just depends. Los Angeles is, for animation and video games and whatnot. Chicago is a huge advertising market, so there's a lot of work there. A lot of people live in New York. I have voiceover friends all over the country. People who live in Atlanta, Chicago, Minneapolis, Denver, Portland. So it can be done from anywhere, but I think it's easier if you are in Los Angeles for a lot of things. Yes?
How'd you get the role for Fang?
I auditioned for it, and then they
give it to
picked
you?
me out of however many people. It was it came through my agent, and I had certainly heard of the Final Fantasy franchise, so I thought this was cool. And once they took me on and they figured out what categories I was best in, that they'll send you a lot of stuff like that. So I would get a lot of auditions for fighting games, a lot of military games, some kind of fantasy games, especially if they needed an evil sounding creature, maybe somebody authoritative. And that was kind of interesting because I think they were literally casting from the ground up. They were casting everybody from the 6 main playable characters, to the tiniest bit parts. And
I have a question to that. When you were auditioning, what character were you aiming for?
Well, that's funny because, I have to use a lot of instinct. Sometimes they will specifically say, we want you to read for these characters. Other times it seems like they're like, we don't know. There's so many things going on right now, do what you want, and then we'll see what sticks. So they sent the sides for everything. I think there were about, that was the thing, is that this agency that I was with was one of the first to initiate home studio policies, so people could audition from home and send them in, because it expedites the process, and it helps speed things up, and it also keeps them ahead of some of the other agents, so they can get stuff in faster. I prefer to go in sometimes because I like the human contact, I like the feedback. But it is awfully convenient if you live farther away or you don't have time and you just want to audition your pajamas. So yeah, there were about 35 pages of sides to look through. And I sipped, and I was like, okay, well, it can't hurt to read for the main character. Why not? You never know. So I read for Lightning. And then I read for Hope, because I read for a lot of teenage boys. Of course, I just told everybody. And then I saw Fang, and I was like, oh, she looks cool, because I love accents and dialects. That's one of my fortes. That's something I've studied, that's something I've had an ear for, an knack for, and it's something that I continue to work on. And I've spent time in Australia. I have family there, and I love it. It's an accent that, I really, really love, and it sort of became second nature. And, you just sort of get into that mindset. So I read that. I think I read for Jill. And I might have read for like one or two other girls. And I did that, sent it in, and I forgot all about it. Because sometimes with those huge games, they take forever to pass. So I didn't get the call until about 2 months later. But thank God, what a fateful call. Yes, you and me.
When it comes to approaching a role, you mentioned that it's like a young boy, like when you're a woman with a lower voice. Like, how do you go about doing that to get the best sound?
Well, it's funny too, because, and this is probably something that I should still be doing. I take classes when I can, you guys. You are never done learning. I love being in a voiceover class in a community setting, and I've had some really amazing teachers. For me, it's weird because if you listen to little boys and little girls, or teenage boys and teenage girls, they just have a different way of speaking, and I'm not talking about depth of voice, there's just a different cadence, and I really had to think about it sometimes. I try not to listen to my 17-year-old nephew most of the time, just because, we're just in different worlds. I don't need to say it like that, but I'm listening to his speech cadence, and what I have to do is I kind of have to lock my jaw, and I have to kind of speak back here. That's, what a lot of girls do, I've noticed, is that they kind of start talking like this, they turn them into little circles. I'm like, yeah, but not everybody talks like that. So there's a different, boys don't inflect as high sometimes. They may just they end on down notes sometimes. It's a whole different pattern. So that's actually something that I really have to think about sometimes. Or I'll picture someone in my head and I'll just imitate them. That's another great way of creating characters. Most of my original characters are based on people that I know, or people who have come in and out of my life. And that makes it easy, because when you know somebody that well and you've heard their voice so many times, you just don't even know. But it's actually something that I would like to get better at, because there are some female actresses that I know who have just nailed it. You guys know who Terry Doty is?
Yes.
Yeah, she's great. Mariana Miller also does a wonderful work. Raven Karbowski, exactly. So it's a good niche to be in, especially in anime. Because the problem is, they want people who sound like children, but they can't necessarily hire children because they're not necessarily great actors. Some of them are, some of them are really natural, but I want somebody who can just knock it out. Right. Exactly, you're right. You had a question.
What's the hardest role you ever did?
Hard in what way? Like emotionally, physically?
Oh.
Soaring was pretty hard. I mean, it was fun for a while. I think a lot of people, and God knows I love when people compliment me on the work that I do, but I have to give credit to the writers and the directors, because there's so many moving parts and it's such a collaborative effort that, I can't say, yeah, this was all me. I mean, a lot of it is how I was directed, and when I have wonderful writing to work with, that makes my job so much easier. Soaring was more hard just, find a way to connect with a Nazi vampire because I have nothing in common with either of them. The fact that she's a Nazi isn't even the worst thing about her. So there was that. You know, I actually, especially in anime and fighting games, you're required to stream a lot. And I tend to get hoarse pretty easily. That's just the nature of my voice. And I do what I can to prevent that. For anybody looking to get into voiceover, there is a magical, wonderful elixir called Injong Heipakwa. It's a Chinese honey loquat syrup that is miraculous. And I'm actually not kidding. That was when I was introduced to it, was for Helsing. Because you have to scream long and you have to scream loud. I did a video game about, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago. The character's name is Jack. So you have an idea already of what she's going to sound like. It was a military game, and basically for the entire 2 hours that I was working, everything was like this! Yeah, come on, man! And just doing that right now on a Sunday morning is like, ow! So, I mean, I do those roles because it's work, but any director worth their salt will know that if they're going to make you do that, they're going to wait till the end of the session to do that. You know, in a way, Fang was difficult only because I spent so much time with her. We built her from the ground up. I was basing my performance really only in tone from the Japanese voice actress, who's wonderful. Her name is Mabuki Yando. But we got to do different things. And, you know, I missed her when it was done. I mean, and the story's extremely emotional, and everybody has these incredible arcs, and that was hard. Like, I kind of went into a small depression after that game was done, because, well, A, you know, when you have a nice long job and it ends, you're like, But also, I love that character. I love that, you know, you have to, when you find a character that you're playing, you have to meet in the middle somewhere. Unless you're the most like her or him, and then you're almost the same person. So, but yeah, I'd say roles that more challenge me, physically, where I have to scream for long periods of time, I think, is, you know, hopefully they'll let me do it on Friday so you have the weekend to recover. Yes?
So, statistically, how would you say, how many roles you audition for versus how many you get?
Wow, well, that's a good question. It just depends. I'm certainly not at the point where people are handing me things left and right. I mean, I hope to be doing this for the rest of my life. And I've gone through phases where I literally was looking at my schedule for the next month and going, oh my God, I'm like booked solid, this is great. And I've gone weeks and months sometimes without really getting anything. I mean, at the height of, you know, my audition percentage, there would certainly be times where I could get 7 to 10 auditions a day. Sometimes more. And some, you know, if I go in, I'd be like, talk to one of my guy friends, what do you may have like 15 pieces of copy. But if I had to guess for a percentage, you might book 3% of what you need for, you know, which is why strength in numbers is so important, which is why it's good to read for as much as you can, because eventually something will stick. You know, I had the opportunity to listen to some auditions for a show that I was in. And the cream of the crop was auditioning for this. You can think of people like Rob Paulson and Maurice LaMarche and Tara Strong and so on and so forth. And it's interesting being on the other side of that. Because you realize that the casting process is not that if you didn't get it, somebody thought you sucked and that's why you didn't get it. It's just because they were looking for something that you didn't particularly have in that moment. So even those guys, I think, still have to crank it out like crazy. And, you know, and it looks like they're working all the time, and, you know, compared to the most of us, yeah, they are. But, yeah, you gotta read a lot, and eventually the numbers will rise. And, I mean, it's not linear either. I never had the kind of career where it was just steady. I mean, sometimes you go like this, and then, yeah, it kind of tapers off a little bit, and then it might go down. I mean, I've had some pretty grim months, you guys, but, you know, I don't stop doing it. Because I love it. When I think about all the other crappy jobs I've had, I would still rather be doing this any day and live with the uncertainty. Yes?
So how do you go about like seeking lessons from teachers?
What's that?
How do you go about seeking lessons, voice lessons?
Are you looking to get into voiceover?
My roommate is.
Okay. Well, do you know what area you're interested in? I'm guessing animation or anything? Okay. Well, as far as that goes, you know, again, I was fortunate. You know, my home and family was Los Angeles. So after I went to college in New York, I came home for summer and I was like, I'm not really ready yet. So then I lived in Colorado for 5 years, which I highly recommend if you have the time. It's gorgeous. And I got to be a ski bum and work in a hotel and have that lifestyle. And then after a while, I was like, okay, I can't hand out hotel keys for the rest of my life if I want to be voiceover. So I moved back to LA and started researching it. I think, you know, the internet was still pretty new as a thing that everybody used at that time, so I just kind of had to rely on my sources. When I was about 16 or 17, I was very fortunate to have come across a dialect coach named Larry Moss, who is an alien, because I think he did about 75 different dialects to demonstrate for us in the course of 20 minutes, and I would have sworn he was from any of those countries. And I remember that day because I thought, wow, this is actually something I could really do. When I came back for a summer once when I was in Colorado, I took a class with a woman named Dolores Deal, and we covered commercials, animation, program narration. And so you start remembering names, and really you just kind of have to ask around. There are so many resources now, it's amazing, you guys. You can just go into Google. And there aren't just, you know, a few classes for a few things. If you want to focus on radio announcing, if you want to focus on audiobooks, if you want to focus on IVR, if you want to focus on promos, animation, video games, and not just video games. What kind of video games? Fighting games, fantasy games, mobile games, children's content. So the resources are kind of endless. One thing I know is if you look up voiceoverresourceguide.com, they have a list of all the animation houses, all the casting studios, all the agencies. I highly recommend classes. I would still do them all the time if I could. And it's tough because, you know, and that's where you kind of have to start knowing people because personal recommendations are better. You don't want to play eeny, meeny, miny, mo with classes. What I've noticed is there are people who are brilliant and there are people who are maybe 2 steps ahead of you and charging way too much money because they can. So, you know, there's never going to be one perfect way to do it. A lot of it is just guesswork. And this is a career like anything else, so it is an investment. If you're serious about it, you have to be prepared to put in a lot of time, sometimes a lot of money, depending. You don't have to go out and get the most expensive mic and home setup or whatever and pay somebody $1,000 because they say they once met a burger, you know. But it's something that you have to have extraordinary patience for it. And, you know, people who get discovered, it is literally lightning in a bottle and not something else. But well worth it. Yes. Well, I should probably update a few of them. You know, I started out with a commercial demo, which is what I would recommend to most people, unless you're just not interested. But don't knock commercials, guys, because they pay the bills. It is very hard to make a living in anime alone, and even sometimes video games. And again, I've been fortunate that, you know, you pay your dues. So if you have a good agent, sometimes they'll be able to get you triple scale. You're not going to get a celebrity because those people come in for one day and they're like, oh, what are you doing? And then 2 hours later, they've just made 20 grand. But for the most part, yeah, you're going to have to work a lot and probably have another job in the meantime. What does my demo sound like? I try to, again, I should update it, but I focus on pieces that speak to my voice. I focus on pieces that, it's not just about how deep my voice is, but what do I sound like in my regular speaking voice? Would you trust me if I was trying to sell you a car? Would you trust me if I was trying to sell you a boat? Or a golf vacation? Or diapers? Or whatever it is. The biggest mistake people can make is trying to squeeze too many different things into one demo. You guys, agents have the attention span of a gnat. If you don't grab them within like the first 3 seconds, they're like, next. Because they just don't have the time. So I think my first official commercial demo had like, I think it was Michelob beer, which I don't think anyone drink that anymore. An ad for Las Vegas, an ad for baby food, You know, so you want something that will speak to, you know, certain character archetypes that sound like, oh yeah, I totally believe she's a mother, or I totally believe she's an attorney, or I believe, you know, she's the queen of whatever. So my animation, I've turned it into an animation / gaming demo to save a little time. And it's a combination of good auditions that I've did, good grammar, that I've done, as well as some actual work that I've done. But again, it should really speak to your signature. It should show range, but they should still know it's you. That makes more sense. Hey, I remember you.
So, I saved this question today actually because I'm not really voice acting today. So Faye and you are very, very close.
Mm-hmm.
And you may notice that like female homosexual relationships are kind of found in and whether you interpret
Yes.
Faye and
Were you at Chris's panel the other yesterday?
Yes.
Talking about Yurikuma?
Yeah.
That platonic love is like a thing, but apparently homosexuality and lesbianism is looked at really as a mental illness and sort of not okay.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you,
No,
but
no. But I was wondering if we, because I haven't met anyone who has thought that like real or just demonic. I just haven't.
most people don't.
And I was wondering if the game itself, and the original Japanese, like pulled that up to make it obvious or not, or if there was a decision to like.
You know, that's a good question, and to me, there were definitely moments where I was like, oh yeah, they're together. And then other moments where I thought, well, maybe they're just like family. The thing that always stood out to me the most, because people ask me this a lot, you know, what do I think about this? Do you think they're together? Do you think they're, I'm like, I don't know. I do think they left it deliberately ambiguous. I think there are some moments that speak to that, some other moments when you're listening to the dialogue where what I interpreted was they have basically spent every waking moment together. I feel like Fang kind of raised Vanille. They're almost like sisters, if not sisters, or like family. They might be together, I don't know. There is very, very clearly love between them. As to what that love is, I feel like they never really define that. And I have no opinion on it either way. I think it's great. I think whatever people want to feel from that is what you're supposed to feel. It was, well, there's a scene where she turns Vanille around to check her brand, and it's under the skirt. And I think they kind of play that up for comedy almost, because you know the rest of oh my God, what is it going this morning? The gang, the group, whatever. They all turn and they're like, you know, like they just witnessed something that they weren't supposed to see. And I was like, okay, maybe they meant that to be funny.